one and all. Boy, I'll tell you, I have a very special treat and a very special podcast with my dearest friend, Tom Christie. And boy, has he got something that everybody's going to absolutely love. And we're going to discuss it in length today. And I'll tell you, he's come up with a lot of great books on Christmas movies. And he's done the Golden Age, and he's done the 80s, and he's done the 90s. Well, he's just come out with the last in the series. And the one we're going to discuss today is called A Seriously Groovy Movie Christmas. And this has to do with movies from the 60s and the 70s. And he's got some real winners in here and some real stinkers as well. And we're going to discuss a little bit about the book, but I got to tell you, you got to get out and get this one because it's very, very interesting. And you learn a lot, not just about the movie itself, but how it got made, who was behind it, everything from the directors and the producers to the cameraman, you name it. And he gets very detailed in this, which is all fun to know, especially when you're watching it. So, and along with the others, as I mentioned, he has the Golden Age of Christmas movies and Righteously Autumn 80s Christmas and a totally bodacious 90s Christmas. So, and everyone is an excellent read. And I invite you all to go out and get it while you can. So, and read it during the holidays. It's kind of fun when you're watching the movies on TV. You can kind of refer back to it. So, anyway, we're going to get into it, and I'd like to, again, welcome my dear friend and fellow podcaster, Dr. Tom Christie.
Hello there, Joe. It's absolutely a delight to be here with you today and to talk about a whole new age of Christmas movies, one that I haven't really touched on before.
And quite an interesting one. Boy, I thought you had some doozies in your other books, but this one was really something.
Well, I think I left this period of festive filmmaking to the end for good reason. And that is because it really is the most surreal period. It's a twilight zone of Christmas movies. I think what happens is you get to the mid-50s and you have White Christmas. And somewhere the studio executives thought to themselves, we have Danny Kaye and Bing Crosby tap dancing. We've reached peak Christmas. It's not going to get any more Christmassy than this. And as a result, the movies start drifting into this Bermuda Triangle where everyone's selling colour TVs. There isn't an awful lot of replay value in some of these films. A lot of them have disappeared into the mists of Christmas past. And you have to wait until the mid-80s until films start to become really, really popular again for the Christmas movie genre. You have to get, that period of Santa Claus, the movie, and Scrooged and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. So you have that long, long period in between where Christmas movies enter their wilderness period. And that was great fun to write about because some of these films are excellent, but sometimes a little bit offbeat. And some of them are not so excellent.
That's putting it mildly. You had a couple in there that I hadn't even heard of. And then as I'm reading your description and the synopsis of the movies, I'm going, they actually put this out there? And we'll touch on those. You got a couple real doozies in there that is like, wow. And I must say, even after the wonderful job you did explaining them and everything, I don't think that's going to be one I'm going to run to the TV and go, oh, look what's on. I don't think I want to watch it even after you've described it. So, especially some of the horror movies. Santa doesn't do horror, really. He really doesn't. And, people have asked me, countless times about some of the movies that, whether I've watched them or not. And if they're a little too blue or a little too dark, probably not. But anyway, there's some interesting ones in here. So, and we'll discuss them. So what do you want to start out with, Tom? It's your book.
Well, there's a question. I mean, do you want to start with the good stuff, or do you want to start with the not so good stuff? Because
Let's give them the good stuff, because I think they're going to get a big laugh out of the not so good stuff. And you know, and the point is, I'm sure that we know there's several movies in here that are more generally known than not known. So we'll touch on those first.
Well, you have films like The Apartment by Billy Wilder, and it's such a well-known movie, and it has such amazing performances in it by people like Jack Lemmon
Yes,
and
I should say.
people like that. You know, it's an amazing film, but people forget, of course, it's set in that week between Christmas and the New Year. And that's a really surreal period of time for many people. It's the one time a year where you might sit in front of your TV in the mid-afternoon watching films like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and The Great Escape. So you have this very, very well-regarded film. Some say one of Billy Wilder's most famous films. And you know, it's interesting to see how that rarefied Christmas period is used to delineate the characters and how they face life and how they're reflecting on their careers. But then at the other end of the scale, you have films like The Lion in Winter. Now, a lot of people say to me, why is The Lion in Winter in this book? And of course, the answer is it's set during a Christmas court, where traditionally the aristocrats would gather together to celebrate Christ's Mass, as it was. So you have that Christmas period. There's a lot of strange anachronisms in that film, and of course we cover them in the book. But the interesting thing about those anachronisms is the fact it doesn't in any way inhibit your enjoyment of the film. It's full of really interesting character moments, and it's essentially a family at war over Christmas. Which
talk about your ultimate dysfunctional family. I mean. There, and then you add the royalty factor into it as well, and it's like, wow, that's just crazy. So
and then of course you have films like Scrooge, the musical version of Scrooge from 1970 by Ronald Neame, and that has a tremendous quality to it. It's got excellent songs. It's got a terrific central performance with Albert Finney.
Yes, he did a fabulous job in that. And what's interesting about Scrooge is there was a little bit of license taken from A Christmas Carol, and some of the things come out a little differently than the traditional, Christmas Carol movies that came before it. And it's kind of fun and interesting to watch, not to mention being a musical in the first place. So, the first time I heard that, I thought, oh, for God's sake, they made a musical out of A Christmas Carol? How? Well, they did a damn fine job. I was quite impressed with it.
Oh, I mean, it's a fantastic film, and there's so many really interesting appearances, cameo appearances by well-known British actors. People like Anton Rogers and David Collings and Roy Kinnear, they're all in there. It's just such a fun movie.
Yeah, I was watching. Now that you mentioned, the last time I watched that, I went, I recognize him. I recognize him. I mean, their names didn't come immediately to mind, but it's like, you're right. They used a lot of stars that were doing a lot of work during that period of time. So, and it was kind of fun from that aspect of it.
And then you come to what I suspect is my favourite film of these 2 decades, and that was The Silent Partner with Elliot Gould and Christopher Plummer. And it's, you've been absolutely right in the past when you said, is it even a Christmas film? Because there's so much going on there. It feels like a Christmas film because you have that peak of high capitalism, because you're in a bank in the middle of a shopping mall in the middle of the Christmas holidays.
Not to mention that Santa is one of the principal characters in the beginning of the film. Now you find out that Santa was basically a thief in wolves' clothing, so it was a different take on that, and that I had forgotten all about that movie. I think I had seen it once, but I couldn't. My God, Elliot Gould. I mean, that was before MASH and everything else, or around that time. He was just starting to come into his own, and he did a fabulous job in that movie. You saw an entirely different side to him.
Christopher Plummer plays such a good villain as well, but he's one Santa that's in grave danger of being on his own naughty list with the kind of language he uses.
Yeah, a little borderline there, but you're right. He's a phenomenal actor and very diversified. So it was, and you forget about this role, and thankfully, I prefer things like Sound of Music, but yeah, I mean, incredible acting done by most of the characters on that, and I thought that was quite interesting with the bank heist and everything else that went on, and now obviously you couldn't get away with that today, but for that period of time, that was a fun twist and turn movie.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. I can see perhaps fans of Alfred Hitchcock would enjoy that film because there are just
yeah.
so many amazing turns. Some of them plausible, some of them unexpected. But it's just such a terrific film, so full of suspense and unexpected surprises.
So yeah, and every time you think you pretty much know what's going to happen next, they take a right turn, and it's not exactly what you expected. So go on. What's the next one?
Well, then you enter that middle ground where it's films that aren't quite as good, but they're very surreal. And I would include in that films like The Christmas That Almost Wasn't, which was an amazing film for sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons. But
Yes.
you certainly can't ignore it. Now, what amazed me was Paul Tripp. Was not a well-known actor over here, but of course he was well known for all the Christmas TV that he did in New York, and made a name for himself. And Tubby the Tuba was the song that he produced as well. He used to write songs for people like Johnny Mathis. I mean, he was a very well-known, very well-liked figure. And it was a strange collaboration between him and the Italian actor Rossano Brazzi, who'd been in films like South Pacific.
Talk about opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, it was
Yeah.
really amazing that those two were together on all of this. And it was kind of interesting premise too.
Yes, yeah. I mean, what amazed me was the fact that the actors, the majority of the actors, were speaking either heavily accented English or they'd been sort of mouthing the lines in English because it was all filmed in Italy with Italian actors. So when it came across to America, it had to be redubbed. With all of the different actors over in America, putting a more recognisable spin on the various different characters, which actually seems more convoluted than just putting American actors in the film in the first place.
Yeah, it was almost like a spaghetti western in the Christmas genre here. I mean, It was similar along those lines where you could tell it wasn't exactly produced in Hollywood, and as you said, all the accents and stuff that came through on that was amazing, but it was still entertaining nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I find it very, very hard to resist a film where the central premise is that Santa Claus has to get a job as Santa Claus in order to pay an overdue rent bill.
And boy, can I relate. As we were talking before this, in 2 weeks, Santa Claus has to go to work in Houston. So, so yeah, it's kind of, I got a kick on it. I'd forgotten about that. I think I only saw that like once or twice, but now it's like, yeah, I really feel bad for this guy. He can't do what he wants to do. He has to do this instead to try and pay for the North Pole. So, which is quite an unusual thing anyway. And that was almost kind of like, speaking of A Christmas Carol, the ending on that was almost similar from the standpoint of the guy that was the antagonist to Santa and causing him all these problems, suddenly turns over a whole new leaf when he gets a Christmas present that he always wanted that he never got. And we've seen that theme in a few movies.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's a very, very strange melange of things like A Christmas Carol, Miracle on 34th Street. There's a whole lot of interesting things going on in that film.
Yes, and it's kind of a blending, and you're not quite sure what may happen next. So,
yeah. But then you move on to other films which are less well known. You have films like A Pocket Full of Miracles, which was Frank Capra's final full-length film, and a remake of Lady for a Day, which certainly he was very fond of. We know from his various memoirs and interviews that it was a film that he had enjoyed after the event. He certainly didn't enjoy it when he was making it, because there were all kinds of problems behind the scenes. But then at the other end of that spectrum, you have films like Who Slew Auntie Roo, which was very surreal.
Hansel and Gretel redone. I mean, boy, that is so odd. You know, and if you didn't know from the beginning what was going to take, I mean, by the end, it's like, oh, good Lord, you know, all the things that, you know, her locking them away and, you know, and everything. It's like, it's going to be the end, you know, and that was the thing. They kept playing it like, is she good? Is she bad? Is she good? Is she bad? And I thought that was kind of interesting from that standpoint. Definitely showed two very different sides of Shelley Winter's character on that. And I thought that was fun and interesting from that standpoint.
Yeah. And the thing is, at the end of the film, you still don't really know if she was good or bad.
You don't know. You're left to decide for yourself if you think she was a witch or was she just a lonely old lady that really wanted kids.
It fits so well into Curtis Harrington's directorial back catalogue, actually, because he produced an awful lot of really interesting, quite out there films, particularly of the horror genre. And he was someone who wrote critically on the subject quite widely. So it's intriguing to see how he fitted that into a kind of historical Christmas kind of background.
Yeah, I mean, that had, you know, a few interesting twists and turns of its own. So, which I thought was well done. I mean, and again, the acting in that was very good, but the storyline itself, it's like, wow, oof, call that a Christmas movie? I mean, and obviously it takes place during the Christmas and her starting out with the big party and inviting all the other orphans and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting premise, to say the least.
And then, of course, you move on to Silent Night, Bloody Night, which was a remarkable, very dark thriller. I mean, it's one of those films, very uncompromising, and it's obviously made on a shoestring budget, set almost entirely on Christmas Eve. But I mean, that's a hugely dark film about insanity and about compulsion and about the human, well, the nature, I suppose, of human interaction. It's a very, very dark film.
I view that basically as Halloween, the movie Halloween meets Christmas.
Yes.
I mean, you know, he's going around killing everybody, and you know, it just, again, that's not exactly on my Christmas hit parade. So, you know, I don't care to see stuff like that, but I know a lot of people enjoy it. So, and I guess it was pretty popular, wasn't it?
Well, it was one of those films, I think it came back again and again because there was a mistake with the bureaucracy in that film that meant it was never copyrighted. So consequently, it entered into the public domain. It was shown a lot at drive-in movie theatres. It had about 3 or 4 different names, including Death House. So consequently, it became a favourite on TV, sort of late night TV. But on the opposite end of that story, of course, you have Bob Clark's film Black Christmas, which is a totally different kind of horror movie. It was much more given towards you know, suspense thriller rather than the grand guignol of all the gore and violence.
Yeah.
But again, you know, again, it very much subverts all the things that we love about Christmas, all of the comfort and the joy and the sense of community. It's all turned on its head.
Yes, entirely. And you know, yeah, you didn't get a lot of good feelings out of that one either. So, and that one you don't see, at least to my knowledge, in the American audiences, you don't see that very often. You do see the one we were talking about before, you know, but not so much that one. So, so yeah, there's a few that pop up every year, and of course, there's a couple that I'm thankful do not.
Yes. Well, there were some films in this book that I honestly didn't know about until I started researching it. Because if you can imagine that there are scrapings at the bottom of the barrel, then there are actually somewhere underneath that barrel.
It melted through the floor and into the ground, and yeah, Santa Claus and the Ice Cream Bunny, which
Yes.
we never did see the bunny have any ice cream, but hey, but that one was just absolutely bizarre. I
Yes.
mean, that was just plain weird.
Yeah. I think the whole story behind that film was actually more interesting than the film itself, which says something. Um, it was just the most bizarre film. I mean, this idea that effectively it was made to popularise an ailing theme park, which, as it happened, didn't last much longer after the film did. But Pirates World,
Well, and that was in part thanks to Walt Disney, who had just opened up Disney World, so they couldn't compete against that. But yeah, that was just plain crazy that they were trying to do this in a pirates theme park and use that as a backdrop.
But I mean, there's so many things about that film that I love. I mean, I love the fact that that's not to say I would want to watch it again, but what I love about it is the idea that you have this vintage fire truck. No one knows why there is a bunny driving the fire truck. You can see the guy pushing the fire truck because it obviously has no engine in it. There's no indication of, for instance, why a dog runs into the path of it, and you can see the film jump because somebody has to go and save the dog to make sure the dog is returned safely to the side of the road before
not to mention the very beginning of this thing, Santa's sleigh gets stuck in the sand, but it's only an inch thick, but he can't get it out. I mean, it's like, you're kidding, right? But this dog can push a fire truck through the sand. That's okay. I mean, it's just weird stuff. And then, of course, the sub stories in this thing, Thumbelina and Jack and the Beanstalk. Come on, really? I mean, it was like, well, what am I really watching? Is it like a menagerie of films or what?
I mean, you have to love the ambition of the filmmakers that both of the movies that appear as part of it, because there were two different variations of the film, one with Thumbelina, the other one with Jack and the Beanstalk, neither of which have anything whatsoever to do with Christmas. But in they go anyway, because why not?
What the heck? Yeah, well, and the stock footage that was put in there and stuff. I mean, it was just that was about as bad gets. I mean, seriously, there's very little production value in there that you can look at and go, well, that was a cool scene. Now, it's like that was just stuck in there on top of everything else. Yeah, I don't know if I could sit through that one.
And let's not forget the magic Christmas tree, which, in fairness, is almost as bad.
Yeah, you're talking about very minute differences as far as which one would be better. But yeah, that one was another one. And talk about bizarre. I mean, how does the tree move around, disappear, decorate itself, undecorate itself, move back? And I mean, it's like, that tree moved more than Treebeard in Lord of the Rings.
And what I love about that film is the fact that, it's a very idealized early 60s notion of what suburban life was like. But what I love about it is the fact that even in the reviews of the time, people are saying this film's about 20, 30 years out of date. This would have been, pushing it for the 30s. But what you have is this kind of almost surreal slice of suburban life pickled in aspic and kept there, like a kind of frozen warning of what this idealized kind of Stepford wives suburban life was like.
Yep. Yeah. And be careful what you wish for kind of thing and that kind of thing. It's just like that was another pretty bizarre one. So yes, folks, I'm telling you, there's some really interesting reads about some of these movies. And I would suggest reading it before you watch the movie because you may or may not want to watch it after this. But Tom gives a good job of giving you a good synopsis and telling you what it's all about before you ever have to sit through this and waste 90 minutes of your life that you'll never get back. So
on that very topic, it would be remiss of us, I think, not to talk about Santa Claus Conquers the Martians.
How could I forget? How could I forget? Oh my Lord.
not only one of the worst Christmas movies ever made, but also arguably one of the worst films ever made. And you know, it's
Period.
all up.
Yeah.
It's all up there in the title. You know, they're leaving you under no illusions as to what it's all about.
And how crazy it gets. And it really is just crazy. I mean, yeah. I I had almost forgotten. And you know what's amazing? Now that's one you'll see every year being repeated on television out here. And it's like, and as they say, it's so bad it's good. Well, this one, it's just so unbelievable and so out there that, you know, you almost can't help but stare at it and just wonder why you're watching it.
It's a bit like the Star Wars holiday special. You know, you watch. I don't think you necessarily enjoy it so much as you experience it, and then
Yeah,
at the end, you think, "What have I just watched?"
yeah. And why? Mostly why? Why did I watch this? You know, boy. I mean, unless you're baking cookies or something when having it on in the background, I wouldn't bother. But or wrapping presents, maybe. You know, where if you miss something, you really didn't miss anything. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, that is a true stinker. I mean
Yeah.
that is just plain horrible.
And
And
filmed in a very short period of time in an aircraft hangar, which had been converted briefly into a film studio. So, you know, as somebody pointed out, it's on an absolutely minuscule budget, and it shows.
yeah, and they flaunt it. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, oh, nobody's gonna care. Yeah, well, you're right. Nobody cared. It was just like, okay, how bad can it get? That bad. All
Yep.
right, moving on. Is that like the worst one for you?
Well, you know,
Which of the worst is the worst for you?
well, do you know, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, I think because of its title, always has this reputation of being the worst. But it's not until you see Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny that you realise it's not even in the top 10.
Yeah.
You know,
Just when you thought it couldn't be worse, oh yes it can. But again, and I gotta tell you folks, seriously, you are gonna love this book about the movies of those times. And especially, I mean, I gotta say, I have something over Tom in the fact that I actually lived through these things when they first came out, you know. And I'd forgotten how bad they were. But you know, but seriously, if you really want to look back on how low budget we could get making movies and how poorly they were put together sometimes, then this is the book for you, and you'll get a good laugh out of it. I mean, because you'll be reading this and going, "I can't believe they did this," and yes, they most certainly did, and you have the celluloid to prove it. So, but anyway, but thank you. This is great and a great way to finish your series. So we're done now. You've covered it from the golden age all the way to the 90s. Or is there more?
well, I'm glad you've asked that actually, because people keep saying to me, "So, Tom, when are you going to be covering any combination of Elf, The Polar Express, Love Actually, all of those kind of movies?" And the
Yeah.
answer is, I think I'm waiting for a point when people feel suitably nostalgic for 20 years ago. And then I'll know it's time.
Well, I might debate you on that. I mean, there are some wonderful movies out there that people may not be familiar with, you know, The Holiday and all of this. There's some great movies out there that, unless you just accidentally happen to stumble upon them, you wouldn't even know they are out there. And they're really, really good and well acted and have, you know, some big name stars in them and that type of thing. So I wouldn't wait too long. Besides, I'm getting older, Tom. I can't wait too much longer. I'd like to see another one.
Well, be careful what you wish for. You never know what else might be in the pipeline.
Well, I'd be delighted, and I wouldn't be careful at all about that one. So, yeah, and again, I invite people not only to pick up a Seriously Groovy Movie Christmas, but any of the other books in this series, because there are some great ones. I mean, absolutely great ones, and we talk about a lot of he talks about a lot of different movies and gives you a good background on, again, how the movie was made, who produced it, how the whole concept came about, and how it was sold to the production studios and stuff, which is an interesting story on its own many times. So, and some that weren't sold to anybody, they just went ahead and made it and hoped for the best. Like this, a couple in here. But anyway, congratulations on a great book, my friend. I mean, seriously. And I enjoyed reading it. There's a couple footnotes and stuff I want to go back and look at that. As you know, this just came out, literally. So I had to kind of race through it, and try and fit it in with all my packing for heading out to Houston and stuff. So anyway, I want to go back and review some of the things that I might have skimmed over or missed. So, but it's that good a book.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great to speak to you, and thanks for your kind words. I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, very much so, my friend. As I have with all your books. I mean, and each one has been very different. And you can look at that and go, oh, yeah, that one had these movies and that one had those movies. And, although I must say, as good as this book was, I still like Golden Age of Christmas best.
Yeah.
Because that was just some of the best movies ever made, absolutely ever made, are in that book.
Yeah. And films like It Happened on Fifth Avenue and The Holly and the Ivy, films that I'm always...
Connecticut Christmas. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's so many good movies. And you forget about them, and, sometimes they don't always show, or you don't happen to catch it when they do show it. So it's fun to go back and look at that and read about it and read the premise of it and such, because they're great movies, great stories.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. As I say, I'm really glad that you've shared the same enthusiasm as I've had for Christmas cinema and the way that it's evolved and changed and been subverted, but ultimately always comes back to those really important themes about goodwill, about friendship, about family, and about community.
The values that we still celebrate at Christmas are the most important values that we have. And we need to always keep those values first and foremost, not only at Christmas, but during the year, but especially at Christmas. And think of others even before you think of yourself. So, which is something Santa's tried to do for millennia. So, so anyway, that's my serious ending on this. And Tom, couldn't thank you enough for this. Best of luck on this. I hope it just blows off the shelves. And because I think people are really going to enjoy it if they pick it up.
Well, thank you so much, and let me also wish you all the best for your upcoming sing-along with the Ice Cream Bunny. I know that you have an album coming out before Christmas time, and obviously the Ice Cream Bunny, it clearly is a celebrity waiting to be rediscovered. So,
and he can wait a few more millennium. Yeah, I won't be looking forward to any sing-alongs on that one yet. So, but thank you, Tom. And again, best of luck with the book. And, I know you got a very busy schedule. Now, where are you promoting this? I understand you're in Sterling and you're going to be, well, of course, I know you're in Sterling, but where are you going to be promoting this in Scotland?
Well, it's going to be promoted in Dundee, and it's going to be promoted in Falkirk as well, and possibly a few other places as well. So if anybody wants to check out my website, which is tomchristiebooks.co.uk, or the Extremis Publishing website, which is extremispublishing.com, they'll be able to see forthcoming dates where I'm going to be talking about the book, giving some presentations about it, and hopefully meeting with lots of interesting people and having a chat about Christmas movies and why they're so special.
Well, and I'm going to invite our viewers here, make sure Tom, you're going to put those in the links for the YouTube video, right? You know, so they can just click right to it and go right to it. So, and also, please, if you would, plenty more to talk about. Some very interesting subjects coming up on the Traditionally Speaking channel, and etc. So, by all means, make sure you're following us so you can see where we're at next.
Okay, so I would just like to thank you once again, Joe, and to wish you and everyone at home a very Merry Christmas.
Yes, very Merry Christmas, everybody, and keep those values and traditions alive. God bless. Thank you.